Have you ever wondered what happens after you finally stop running from yourself? Somewhere between your fear and your face in the mirror, there is a room you have never entered. Shadow work is not the end of your pain, it is the door. And once you walk through it, something strange begins to happen. The world doesn't change. You do. By the end of this, you will understand the one shift that turns your deepest wound into your greatest power. Have you ever caught yourself smiling when nothing inside you wanted to smile? Have you ever answered, "I'm fine," when the truth sat heavier than stone in your chest? If so, you already know the mask. You have worn it so long you have forgotten it is a mask at all. You believe it is your face. This is where shadow work begins, not in some distant temple, not in some ancient scroll, but in this simple, uncomfortable truth. Most of what you show the world is not you. It is a performance built quietly, piece by piece, from the moment you first learned that certain parts of you were not welcome. Think back. Somewhere in your childhood, a part of you was too loud, too soft, too angry, too sensitive, too much. And somewhere in that moment you made a decision, not with words but with instinct. You decided, "I will hide that part. I will keep it in the dark, where no one can see it, where no one can hurt it, where no one can hurt me because of it." And so the mask was born. Not out of weakness, out of intelligence, out of survival. This is the first truth you must accept before you can move forward. Your mask was never your enemy. It was your protector. It kept you safe when you did not yet have the strength to stand fully exposed in the world. But protection, when it goes on for years, becomes a prison. You wake up one day, successful perhaps, respected perhaps, surrounded by people perhaps, and yet there is a strange hollow feeling that follows you into every room, a quiet whisper that says, "They don't really know me. If they did, would they still stay?" This is the ache of a life lived behind a mask, not because you are broken, but because the real you, the one who feels deeply, who fears deeply, who wants deeply, has been sitting alone in the dark for far too long, waiting for you to remember it exists. Shadow work asks a simple but terrifying question. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when you are not performing for approval, for safety, for love? Most people never ask this question because some part of them already suspects the answer will be uncomfortable. And they are right, it will be uncomfortable. But discomfort is not danger. Discomfort is simply the sound of growth, knocking on a door you have kept locked for years. Here is what I want you to understand deeply. Before we go further, the mask is not shameful. Wearing it does not make you fake or weak or dishonest. It makes you human. Every person you have ever admired, every person who ever stood before you with confidence and grace, they too have worn masks. They too have hidden parts of themselves in the dark corners of their being. The difference is not that they have no shadow. The difference is that at some point they turned around and looked directly at it. And that single quiet moment of turning toward what you have spent your whole life running from is where everything begins to change. But turning around is not easy, because what waits for you in the dark is not simply your mask. It is your pain. And pain has a way of convincing us that it is something to be feared, something to be avoided at all costs. But what if everything you were taught about pain was wrong? 2. Why your pain was never the enemy. We are taught from a very young age to run from pain, to numb it, to distract from it, to bury it under work, under noise, under constant motion. We are taught that a good life is a painless life. And so the moment pain rises within us, our first instinct is to push it back down, to smile through it, to pretend it isn't there. But I want to offer you a different way of seeing this. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is a messenger, and like every messenger, it carries something important, something you need to hear, even if you do not want to hear it. Think of pain not as a wall meant to stop you, but as a hand reaching out from the depths of your own being, trying to get your attention. It does not want to destroy you. It wants to be seen. It wants to be understood. It wants you to finally stop and listen after years of being ignored. When you were young and you felt fear or sadness or anger, and no one around you had the patience or the wisdom to sit with you in that feeling, what happened? You learned quietly that this feeling was not welcome. You learned to swallow it, to push it into the corners of yourself where it would not be seen. And so, layer by layer, year by year, an entire hidden world formed inside you, a world made entirely of the feelings you were never allowed to feel. This is your shadow, not evil, not broken, simply unfelt, unseen, unheard. And here is the strange, beautiful truth. Everything you have been running from your entire life is not chasing you to hurt you. It is chasing you because it wants to come home. Imagine a child standing alone in a dark room calling out for someone to come find them. That child is not your enemy. That child is you. A younger version of you still waiting, still hoping that one day someone strong enough, patient enough, brave enough will walk into that room and say, "I see you now. You are safe. You do not have to hide anymore." This is what shadow work truly is. It is not about fixing something broken within you. It is about finally walking into that dark room and sitting down beside the parts of yourself you left behind. And I will tell you something that may surprise you. The moment you stop running from your pain, it begins to lose its power over you, not because it disappears, but because it no longer needs to shout to be heard. It simply needs your presence, your attention, your willingness to no longer look away. This is not weakness. This is one of the bravest things a human being can do. Because it is far easier to numb yourself, to distract yourself, to keep moving so fast that you never have to sit still with what hurts. It takes far greater strength to stop, to turn, to feel. And when you finally allow yourself to feel what you have avoided for years, something begins to shift quietly beneath the surface of your life. The anger that once controlled you starts to soften into understanding. The sadness that once drowned you starts to become a teacher. The fear that once paralyzed you starts to reveal exactly where your growth is waiting. Pain, once faced, transforms into wisdom. This is not a metaphor. This is the oldest and most reliable law of the inner world. But there is one more piece to this, a piece most people miss entirely because they stop the moment the pain begins to ease. They feel a little relief and they believe the work is done. But relief is not transformation. Relief is only the beginning, because after the pain quiets, a silence arrives, and that silence is where the real work begins. 3. The moment the noise finally stops. There will come a moment, if you continue this inner work honestly, when the noise you have lived with your entire life, the noise of self-judgment, the noise of comparison, the noise of endless thought, begins slowly to fade. At first, this silence feels strange, almost uncomfortable. You have spent so many years surrounded by mental noise that you have mistaken it for who you are. And so, when it quiets, you may feel a moment of confusion. Who am I? Without the constant stream of worry, without the constant performance, without the constant need to prove myself. This question is not something to fear. It is the doorway to everything you have been searching for. In the quiet after the noise stops, you begin to hear something you could not hear before. Not because it was silent, but because you were too loud to notice it. Beneath every fear, beneath every mask, beneath every wound you have carried, there has always been a quiet, steady voice. Calm, unshaken, patient. This voice has been with you since the day you were born, waiting for the noise to settle so it could finally be heard. Some call this voice intuition. Some call it the true self. I simply call it home. When you sit in this silence, not running, not distracting, not performing, you begin to notice that your worth was never something you had to earn. Your peace was never something you had to chase. It was always here, buried beneath years of noise, waiting patiently for you to grow quiet enough to remember it. This is the strange thing that begins to happen when your shadow work truly deepens. The world outside you does not change. The people around you do not change. But the way you experience your own existence changes completely. Where there was once anxiety, there is now presence. Where there was once a desperate need for approval, there is now a quiet, unshakable sense of being enough, simply as you are, without needing to prove anything to anyone. And in that silence, you begin to hear the questions that truly matter. Not how do I look to others, but how do I feel within myself? Not what do I need to become, but what have I been all along beneath the noise? This silence is not empty. It is full of everything you buried, now returned, now integrated, now finally at peace. It is the sound of a life no longer at war with itself. What silence reveals about who you really are. Sit with me for a moment, not physically, but in the way that matters. Close the noise around you, even if just for the length of these words. because what I am about to share with you can only be understood in stillness. When the silence I spoke of earlier settles over you, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to notice a strange gap, a space between what happens to you and how you respond to it. This gap has always existed. You simply never had the quiet to see it. In that gap lies your true self, not the version of you shaped by fear, not the version of you shaped by what others expected. The version that was there before any of that arrived, whole, curious, unafraid. Here is something worth sitting with. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. You are not your fear. You are the one who feels it rise and pass. For most of your life you believed you were the storm, but you were always the sky the storm moved through. This is not a comforting idea to make you feel better. It is a simple, observable truth, available to anyone willing to grow quiet enough to see it. Watch a thought arise, a worry, a memory, a judgment about yourself. Now ask who is watching this thought. That watcher does not judge, does not panic, does not need to prove anything. That watcher has been with you your entire life, patient and unchanged, beneath every mask, every wound, every performance. Silence does not create this awareness. Silence simply removes what was covering it. And once you touch this part of yourself, even briefly, you can never fully forget it again. You may lose sight of it. Life will pull you back into noise, into old patterns, into old fears. But some part of you will always remember, there is a quieter, steadier place within me. I have felt it. I know it exists. This knowing changes how you move through the world. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to pause before old wounds speak for you. You begin to ask in moments of difficulty, not how do I protect myself, but what does this moment actually require of me? This is not weakness dressed as calm. Now, this is strength that no longer needs to announce itself. And once you know this quiet self exists, you begin to notice something else. A power that was there the entire time, hiding inside the very thing you feared most. 5. The power that was hiding behind your fear. Every fear you have ever carried has a strange, hidden gift folded inside it. Not the fear itself. The fear is simply the wrapping. But underneath, if you have the courage to unwrap it, there is always something valuable waiting. Think of the fear of being truly seen. Beneath it often lies a deep capacity for connection. You fear rejection precisely because you value belonging so completely. Think of the fear of failure. Beneath it often lies a deep respect for meaning. You fear wasting your life precisely because some part of you wants to live one that matters. Your fears are not random, they are precise. They point like an arrow directly at what you care about most. This is why running from fear never truly works. When you run, you are not escaping danger. You are turning your back on the very thing that could show you where your greatest strength is buried. I am not asking you to chase fear recklessly. I am asking you to stop treating it as an enemy to defeat and start treating it as a teacher to question. The next time fear rises in you, instead of asking, how do I make this go away, ask instead, what is this fear trying to protect? What does it say about what matters to me? This single shift from resistance to curiosity is where real power begins. Consider the anger you have judged yourself for. Somewhere inside that anger is a boundary you were never allowed to hold. Consider the sadness you have hidden from others. Somewhere inside that sadness is a depth of feeling that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Consider the parts of yourself you were told were too much, too intense, too sensitive, too passionate. Somewhere inside those very qualities is the exact fuel that could carry you toward the life you actually want. This is the deepest secret of shadow work. You are not searching for power somewhere outside yourself. You are not waiting for permission or validation or the right circumstances. The power was always within the very parts of you that you learned to hide. When you integrate your shadow, when you stop rejecting the parts of yourself that were once too much, too loud, too honest, you do not become someone new. You become someone whole. And wholeness carries a kind of strength that performance can never fake. People will sense it, even if they cannot name it. There is a quiet difference between someone who is trying to appear strong and someone who has genuinely made peace with every part of who they are. One demands attention, the other simply commands respect, without asking for it at all. This is not the end of your fear. Fear will still visit you. This is part of being alive. But your relationship with it changes completely. It no longer controls you from the shadows. It walks beside you honestly, as a reminder of what you value, rather than a warning to retreat. And this shift, from hiding to wholeness, leads to the final, most important truth of all. Long ago, there was a version of you, long before the world taught you to hide, a version that laughed without self-consciousness, that expressed anger without shame, that cried without apology, that dreamed without calculating whether the dream was realistic or safe. Somewhere along the way, this version of you was told, in 1,000 quiet ways, that it needed to change to be accepted. And so, piece by piece, that original self was folded up and placed carefully in the dark, replaced by a more careful, more controlled, more acceptable version, the one the world seemed to prefer. Shadow work is the long, patient road of finding that buried self again, not to become someone new, but to finally return to someone real. This is not a quick process, and I will not pretend otherwise. Some days you will feel proud of how far you have come. Other days old patterns will rise again, and you will wonder if any of this work truly mattered. This is normal. Growth is not a straight line. It moves in circles that slowly widen, each time bringing you back to old wounds with a little more understanding than before. What matters is not perfection. What matters is direction. Are you, patiently, becoming more honest with yourself than you were a year ago? Are you responding to your fear with curiosity instead of avoidance? Are you allowing yourself to feel what you once buried instead of numbing it away? If the answer is yes, even slightly, you are already living the transformation this work promises. The person you buried long ago is not gone. They have been waiting this entire time, patiently, for you to grow strong enough, wise enough, and brave enough to come back for them. Every act of self-honesty is a step toward that reunion. Every moment you choose truth over performance, presence over distraction, feeling over avoidance, you are bringing a piece of yourself home. And here is what I want you to carry with you long after these words end. You do not need to fear what lives in your shadow. You do not need to fear the pain, the anger, the sadness, the parts of you the world once called too much. These are not flaws to hide. They are doorways to the most complete, most powerful version of who you are always meant to become. The strange things that begin to happen when your shadow work ends are not strange at all. They are simply the natural result of a life no longer divided against itself. Peace that does not depend on circumstances. Strength that does not need to be proven. Presence that does not flinch from truth, whether it is beautiful or painful. This is not a destination you reach once and keep forever. It is a way of living, a daily return to honesty, a daily choice to meet yourself exactly as you are, without judgment, without hiding, without apology. You were never broken. You were simply waiting for silence, for courage, and for the quiet, patient moment when you finally decided to turn around, walk into the dark, and bring yourself home.